Sometimes during the draft pick,
Wait a minute.
you can immediately tell your chances of winning. There are just some heroes who badly need some adjustments. So let's try to fix them together today. If you have any further suggestions to fix a hero I mentioned, or even want to fix a hero I didn't mention, let me know in the comments. Now let's start with the first hero right away. And when I say the first hero, I really mean the first hero. Number 1. Layla. She's the first hero you will ever use when you just downloaded the game. And honestly, she's not that bad, but also not really good, which is why she has the lowest win rate of all heroes. I don't want Moonton to revamp her into some kind of high mechanic monster with a couple of crazy dashes and a 10-second death immunity skill. I personally love how Moonton keeps her skills simple and easy to understand. Passive: the farther the target, the more damage you deal. First skill: long pew pew with high damage. Second skill: short pew pew with boom. Ultimate: long AF pew pew. So what's the problem here? Layla is a long-range specialist who can't keep her distance. A lot of dive heroes can jump on her, closing the gap without much issue, and kill her on the spot. I'm looking at you guys. So I have one suggestion to fix her, without making her gameplay too complicated. Let all her skills leave a mark on enemies she hit, which reveals their location for 1 second. This will help her to check the sus bush without getting herself into danger. The change of her passive definitely won't get her into the meta, but it will certainly help her in the early and late game. The best part about this fix is, it doesn't change her gameplay at all. Layla is still a squishy immobile hero as before, but rewards those players with a good map awareness. Number 2. Gord.
I'm not a monster. I'm a demon.
Shut! You're the clown from the land of Dawn, bro. Gord has been through a series of revamps and buffs, but it still doesn't make him a decent option to rank up solo. His speciality is to clear the lane and deal magic DPS to enemies. But even though his combo can easily delete squishy heroes, the risk using him in a match is just much higher than the possible reward. So we need a bit of fixing to bump him out of the troll pick section. He has 2 major problems regarding his skills. Firstly, his passive requires a lot of hits before it triggers the true damage. I think it would be a good idea to reduce the number of hits, but we need to reduce the magic scaling from his true damage to balance it out. This will also make it easier for him to slow enemies. And secondly, his ultimate has 2 weaknesses. Firstly, the laser radius is very small, and even though it has a pretty good range, it is still very easy to avoid with a single dash. And most meta heroes have at least 1 dash or escape ability to ruin his combo. Secondly, he is extremely vulnerable against flanking, because he is a sitting duck during the Kamehameha session. The thing I want to add here is a cancellation bonus. Give him, for example, an explosion that knocks back enemies after cancelling his ultimate, or maybe a movement speed bonus to escape. It's only fair, since even Odette gained a shield to survive while channeling the ultimate. This also won't let him become a broken hero, but at least a usable one, since he would have a defensive mechanism now. Number 3. Bellaric. This tree guy has a bigger problem than his trunk can handle. Bellaric kinda lost his place in the meta, and even after they buffed him with the recent balance adjustment, the durability and base damage from his passive hasn't been improved at all. Of course, it is very useful against DPS heroes, but still, the passive is pretty much based on RNG. You can't expect the thorns to trigger every time you receive damage from enemies. In short, his passive is a gacha game. His first skill is a delayed taunt, his second skill is a slowing slap into the face, and his ultimate triggers every enemy around him like those toxic ML players. Don't be a toxic person, please. So, there are 2 things I want to change to improve his performance. Firstly, as an initiator for the team, Bellaric has difficulties to catch the enemy. His first skill and ultimate has a delay before the taunt triggers, and the skill animation also doesn't have any clear indication about the speed of his roots that should reach his enemies. Increasing the AoE or speeding up the taunt effect would really be helpful. If we need to compare him to meta tanks like Atlas, he has faster skill animations and pulling effects to gather the enemies on one spot. He also has a decent frozen passive to keep the enemies from running away. Bellaric has none of these. The skills are harder to land and his CC duration is also bad. Secondly, instead of enhancing his next basic attack after using his second skill, they should separate the skill into 2 phases instead. The first phase to increase the movement speed and immediate heal, and the second phase to slam the ground and immobilize enemies in a small area. It needs some balance adjustment though, like lowering the damage since it becomes an AoE skill, or reducing the movement speed or heal bonus to balance it out. Number 4. Aurora. Think of any burst hero, but worse. The Queen of Ice is securing the bottom position among the mages, and this is one of the most obvious signs that she is unable to perform well in today's meta. Her passive gains a stack for every skill usage, and at the final stack, her next skill will freeze the enemies that have been hit. Her first skill throws an ice block forward, the second skill also throws an ice block, but it's a single target locked, and the ultimate also throws an ice block, but much bigger. On paper, her skills doesn't sound that bad, but in reality, her skills have a lot of weaknesses that are easy to counter. Let's check how we can improve her skills. Firstly, her passive is very outdated. Aurora have very long cooldowns, which means she will perform really bad in skirmishes and teamfights. Her passive will be resetted when she casts a skill or pokes the enemies, and it's really easy to bait it out if the enemies pay attention to her passive and skill cooldowns. Frozen is also just a fancier name for a good old stunt. Sure, it grants plus 20% extra damage to her skills, but that's it. Your teammates can't benefit from the extra damage, so improving this stat can actually benefit her gameplay. For example, frozen enemies will receive 15% extra damage for the duration. So instead of focusing her to a solo camper that deals a huge AoE damage, her frozen effect can be more beneficial to the team, especially if her skills hits a group of enemies. Aurora can also improve her repertoire during teamfights. Instead of the usual 2-3-1 combo where she locks on a single target, she can do more combos like 3-1-2 or 1-3-2 for a huge freezing area. Number 5. Alufeed. Honestly, this guy is not that bad anymore after the recent adjustments. Even though we always tease his users with funny nicknames. He's at least not part of the clown tier and a decent pick in lower ranks. His big weakness is CC effects, so as long as the enemy's draft is lacking heroes with CC, you can easily dominate the enemies without much trouble. In higher ranks though, you hardly encounter a team comp that features no heroes with strong CC abilities, which makes him still a pretty weak pick in Mythic and beyond. To fix this situation, we might need to tweak his passive a little bit. In higher Mythic games, his passive is pretty hard to trigger in skirmishes and teamfights. Enemies often, if not always, group up before engaging, especially against a hero that excels in a 1v1 fight like Alucard. So I had the idea to remove the bonus damage of his skills and put it all on his basic attacks instead. There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, basic attacks can deal damage to multiple heroes instead of just one. This will be beneficial for him in a team fight. And secondly, his ultimate will always trigger pursuit. Let him dash with every basic attack to the target during the ultimate duration, instead of relying to cast a skill after each and every basic attack. This will retain his speciality as Demon Chaser, but not entirely remove his weakness against CC effects. It will make it much easier for him though. Next up, we have the least popular hero in Mobile Legends. Number 6. Glue. Even if the lore told us that Glue resides deep inside of the Shadow Swamps, I think it's a lie. I know that he actually lives in Rock Bottom.
But sir, we need to get back to Bikini Bottom.
Sadly, nobody loves this guy anymore, although he was one of the top ban candidates not too long ago. His passive applies glue to the enemies that he hits with his skills, his first skill throws a glue bomb forward, his second skill spits a reactive glue that sticks right away, and his ultimate makes him small and lets him glue himself to his enemies. From the skill sets alone, we can immediately tell his identity as a tank is questionable at best. There's no skill to protect his teammates, and all of them are actually offensive skills to pick off a single target. But he's also lacking the damage when he's built as a tank. Heroes with dash skills and movement boost can also easily outrun his ultimate. There's no end to his problems. It makes glue users a bit gloomy. The only thing that I want to buff are his skills and passive. Firstly, the core gameplay of Glue is closer to a fighter than a tank. The most effective strategy is to flank the enemy's damage dealer in a teamfight, sticking up to them and drag them to the front line by using his skills. But unlike other flankers, he lacks the element of surprise. His skills have a long animation and the combo is clunky. So there are 2 solutions for this. Firstly, if they want to keep Glue as a tank, they should revert his ultimate regeneration to sustain more damage. This will not solve his chasing issue, but the extra regen will give him enough room for mistakes. Or secondly, if they want to change glue into a fighter or a fighter tank maybe, they should increase the first and second skill radius and range for better pokes. This will also act as a bridge to quickly get close to the enemy's backline. They can keep his damage as it is though, since it would break the balance if he deals too much damage without damage items. Number 7. Alpha. As one of the OG heroes in Mobile Legends, Alpha is barely able to fit in the current meta. He has very short skill cooldowns, which makes him pretty strong in skirmishes, but if you take a look at the bigger picture, he's just another hero with a clunky skill set. His passive works after he lands 2 skills on his enemies. The first skill sends a laser in a short line, the second skill swings his blade in a fan-shaped area, and his ultimate lets him charge forwards, knocking enemies airborne. The main problem is not his skill set, but the long-ass animation of his skills. So the first thing to fix his weakness is pretty simple. Just make his skill animation faster, because his skills are pretty easy to dodge. This would fix a lot of his problems, because his skills have either a short range or small radius. Secondly, Alpha has a unique skill set that helps him to deal true damage against the enemies. But the damage scaling is gravely depending on the items. This puts him in an awkward situation. As a charge hero that dives deep into the enemy's backline, he can be easily taken down after a single mistake. But if he builds a lot of tanky items to survive the front line, his skills won't deal any damage because its base damage is pretty low. No surprise that Alpha got beaten by Saber even in the lore. They should probably rename him Beta 1 and Beta 2 in the next update. Number 8. Gatokachā. He's a very strong hero indeed, but with the increasing number of dashing rats in the current meta, Gatot is having a hard time to catch even one hero with his current kill set. Or skill set. Bah. His passive gives him a huge physical defense bonus at low HP, which will get penetrated by Leslie though. His first skill has a very small distance, the second skill is also a very small distance, while his ultimate has a long ass distance, but also a long ass animation, so that enemies can easily walk away from the AoE. There's so much to fix on his skill set, but the first thing we need to fix is his passive. His passive quickly dissipates, so we should make it last longer. To balance this, we can reduce the bonus damage he deals to the enemies, but keep the regeneration he gains for each hit. This will give a clearer distinction that he is a tank, and not the executor of the team. Secondly, his first skill damage should also be reduced. In exchange, make the slow effect stronger and the AoE wider. This will give him a better way to control the enemies in a team fight. And thirdly, increase his ult animation, so he can actually hit the enemies. Number 9. Hanzo. No joke, Hanzo is actually a strong hero that is able to destroy his enemies. At least as long as they don't have any escape skills. So, he's the best at dealing with Layla, Leslie, Hanabi, you name them. That's why he is so feared in the lower ranks, where these heroes run around in every match. But he's not a big problem in higher ranks. Honestly, there's not much to improve because his skills are pretty balanced. But there's one fatal mistake in his Demon Blood logic. It's not considered as mana nor as energy by Moonton. So taking the blue buff will not reduce the Demon Blood consumption at all. This is pretty unfair to Hanzo, so the only thing that can help him to climb the popularity ladder without making him imbalance is let him stay longer in his demon form. The demon form is very squishy anyway, which is why some even use a semi or full tank build for him. Making him able to stay longer in the battle to annoy the enemies will increase his popularity, without making him overpowered. There should be some adjustment to not make him too strong with a tank build though. Number 10. Mincetar. This guy was introduced as a counter for dash heroes, so he should have a place in the current meta right now. Still, he's super unpopular and let's be honest, he deserves to be unpopular. Would you pick this guy instead of Kufra, Phoveus, Kaja or Franco? No, of course not. Only a madman chooses this hero over the superior 4 I mentioned before. And if you haven't noticed it, my voice broke, yeah, I realized that. His passive is useless AF, giving him a bit of extra gold. His first skill is just Franco's hook but worse. His second skill is tackling the enemies with his shield, which has a very short distance and is easy to dodge. And his ultimate counts for the boys, who are not moving at all and the area is super easy to avoid, even by the dashing rats. So, let's see what we can do to fix him. Firstly, replace the passive entirely. The gold bonus doesn't benefit him much, since he's not the main damage dealer. and the extra gold to his allies is laughable at best. It will be so much better to change it into something practical instead, like giving nearby allies some hybrid attack and defense attributes. Secondly, I won't change his clunky spear mechanic, but at least give him a short dash before slamming his shield to the enemies in front. This will help him to land his stun better, because some enemies can just walk away like it's nothing. This happened because his Spear of Glory only pulls enemies in, but not stunning them. Thirdly, increase the number of his Royal Guards after every level up. This can be used to deal more damage to the enemies, or increase the size of the anti-dash field into a pentagon or hexagon. Finally, reduce his mana cost. Or better, remove the mana cost entirely from this guy. Why would this guy need mana anyway? Even a dead man riding a horse doesn't need it. If you play Mincetar regularly, you know that this guy drains way too much mana for a single team fight. You'll often find yourself out of mana before the next battle starts, which result in you recalling back to the base and leaving your teammates behind. Now check out my video where I show you 10 heroes who are easy to play, but strong enough that you can rank up with them under mythical glory. See you over there!